every step on the court, every tip, comes the time to leave it all on the floor. Nowhere is that more true than Lexington, Kentucky. Tonight, we take on the task of highlighting the city's best ball players. This is Lexington basketball's all-time top 25. Welcome into a special evening edition. This one is dedicated to something that we all love, and that's the game of basketball. We are sitting at courtside, actually center court here of the Dunbar Community Center. So special to be here because there had been so many special games take place over the years at this court. Now, all week we've been revealing the top 25 best high school basketball players in Lexington. Tonight, it all comes down to the top 5. Who will make the list? We'll find out in the next few minutes. But first, let's meet the panel who helped tackle this tall task. Jared Peck, thank you so much for being here from the Lexington Herald. Alan Cutler, I believe you recognize from one time working alongside me at LEX 18, sports director.
For 1 or 2 months, yeah.
Yes, we appreciate you returning. Also someone I'm very close to working with, Mary Jo Perino. I had the chance to not only work with you, or didn't work with you at LEX 18 as a sports person, but did get the chance to do it to start off BBN tonight. So thank you so much for being here. And Dick Gabriel, the Big Blue Insider gave me my start in this business. I don't know whether to thank him or take him out, but much appreciated to you for doing all that. Now, all week we've had the honor of highlighting the best in high school basketball. We had the pleasure of catching up with some of the people who made the top 25. We can all attest that coming in with this list, that wasn't an easy task to do. There were some names that just consistently came in at the top, though. So let's get into it. It's time to reveal the top 5 best Lexington high school basketball players. We're going to start out at number 5. It's none other than James Lee. Played at Henry Clay in the early 1970s. Dick, what do you remember about James Lee and his play here?
He packed the house. Whenever Henry Clay played, there were just great crowds. And one of my favorite memories of high school basketball in Lexington was when Henry Clay played Bryan Station, Givens and Lee, and we knew they were coming to Kentucky. I had a pretty good idea. We knew they were best friends. Memorial Coliseum at that point, you remember, Alan, held 11,000 people, and it was jammed. I snuck in. I was a freshman at UK and snuck in a back door. The fire marshal turned people away for a regular season game to watch those guys go at it, and James was just literally a man among boys the way he played basketball.
Let's jump into what Dick said. And for my money, from all the people I've talked to, we've talked to so many people, that was the golden era of high school basketball in Lexington. The crowds have never been the same since I arrived in the early 80s, and there was an electricity, stealing Dick's word, about high school ball that was just off the charts. I mean, it was like, not to steal NBC, it was must-see TV by coming to the games.
Yeah. Henry Clay, I think they gave him a commemorative jersey last year at the Bryan Station Henry Clay game, and Jack Givens was with him for that. And they asked them both if they would like to step into the locker room and say something to the Henry Clay before they played, and Jack Givens respectfully declined. And he said, "There's no way I'm going back there with Bryan Station here." So it was a fun moment for me.
All right, coming in at number 4, and I think it's appropriate that we're sitting here in the Dunbar Center talking about Julius Berry. Played in the late 50s. By all accounts, scored about 3,000 points. Nobody has ever, I don't think, Jared, been able to verify that from everything I've seen.
The KHSAA has it at exactly 3,000. They've put it there, and he starts the list going up, and I think he'll always be on that list. But for a while, when contemporary Lexington players were working up the list, writers would forget that Julius Berry was there, and I've tried to make it a point to make sure he's on any list when players move it up these days.
Yeah.
What I really liked when you look at the list, when you guys sent it and said, look at it, I was concerned that a lot of the former black players who didn't, some of these guys play against the white players, and because of so many years that we forget, wouldn't get enough respect. And when I got here, I heard about him breaking rims. You know, that he broke rims and he could have played all kinds of places, but because of the times, he didn't get enough respect Today, he would be on all kinds of lists and stuff like that. I never saw him play, but I talked to a number of people in the black community and said, "Oh, Cutler, you really missed it." So I really was pleased how everybody voted the way I think it should have been voted, by giving respect to some of the older players, one, and some of the older African-American players.
I had a chance to get to know S.T. Roach a little bit and talk to him about some of his teams. And so, yeah, that era was just a shame, you know, and they had a segregated state tournaments until the early 60s and all that. But Julius Berry's name is almost this name that just sort of floated above the rest, you know, one of two or three like that. So I'm like you, I was delighted to see that he was on the list.
Didn't he drop 54 in a game, something like that?
Probably.
Doesn't it make you sad that we don't have video of those kind of days
Somebody
and some of those
probably
players?
has home movies.
Maybe,
and if you do,
we'd love to see them.
If the world was different, he might have helped Adolph Rupp win another national championship. He was that good.
He was.
Incredible. All right, let's go to number 3. Jeff Mullins of Lafayette coming in at number 3. I know we were kind of talking off camera. You guys kind of remember him, or at least know of his play, right?
Oh, yeah. And, you know, I've talked to guys who played with and against him, and they just said he was just so special. I kind of dropped into Lexington when his father was transferred from, I think, upstate New York. So he didn't grow up here, but certainly quickly made a name for himself. And then when he went off to Duke, you know, had a great career down there. And I was telling you that prior to that kid from Duke hitting that shot in that one game.
The one guy we don't say his name.
People around here were kind of sympathetic to Duke because of Jeff Mullins. They were very proud of him.
Yeah.
You know, he represented Lexington in the ACC and at Duke, and he was a special, according to everybody I know who saw him and played against him, he was a talent.
Pure shooter, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're talking about high school, I understand, but he was a first-round draft choice in the NBA, had a long career, and was extremely fundamentally sound. And he got his game, he had all the talent when he got here, but it got polished more, so I was told, in Lexington.
Here we go. We're getting so much closer to the top spot. Let's go to number 2 now, shall we? And it is none other than Lafayette guard Dirk Minniefield.
Minniefield was considered the best guard in the country, and there was another young man named Isaiah Thomas, and Dick is nodding his head because he obviously knows this too, is that many thought that Dirk was better than Isaiah Thomas, and he had some dunks and flying stuff that was absolutely off the charts. So many will tell you he was the best guard in the country, period. Forget about, you know, being the best around here in the country.
And they were, I'm sorry, they were so good. There were 2 Derby Classic games that year.
Yeah.
Because they could sell tickets right there, one in Louisville, one in Lexington. And in one game, Dirk got the better of Isaiah, and then in the next game, Isaiah made him pay. But watching those guys go at it was phenomenal.
All right, we've come to the very top of the top 25. Time to reveal our number 1 player. The answer is probably not going to come as a surprise to you. It is one Jack Goose Givens, and I had the chance to let him know he was number 1.
Oh, is that right? Oh, I didn't know that. To be at the top of the list, man, I mean, I'm not 100% sure about that one.
Well, we have to keep some secrets from you, Goose. And to follow up on him questioning the top of the list, well, it was short notice, but who would he put up there?
Dirk Minniefield was a tremendous high school player. You have Michael Scares, who was here. You have Mel Turpin, who came through here. I mean, if I had time to think about it. And then the other thing is there were a lot of great players even before me.
Goose played at Bryan Station as a forward for 2 seasons and finished as a center. He scored 1,777 points in his career, which was an 18.7 points per game average. He also led the defenders to a 76-17 record. That means he won 82% of the games that he played in for the defenders. Also led them twice to the Sweet 16.
The thing that probably stands out as much as anything is the crowds that we would attract to the games. I mean, standing room only is an understatement. Talent level of high school basketball back in those days, I don't think it's been matched since. And I know that's saying a lot, but I feel really confident that we had so many great players on every team in Lexington. Between that and the crowds, if I had a period that I would want to go back to, it would be my high school days at Bryan Station. It was so much fun.
And when it comes to competing, He probably went the hardest against his future teammate, Henry Clay's James Lee, who is 5th on this top 25 list.
And I remember a game at Bryan Station against James Lee, and I had 45 points and 25 rebounds. And I used to tell James, I killed you, man. And I looked across the stat sheet, and James had about 32 and 26, 32 points, 26 rebounds. And he'll always look, he said, but we won the game. Because Henry Clay beat us at Bryan Station. So those were the kind of games we had, and that's why people wanted to get in to see us play.
So, you hear that was the battle between those two, and 2 top 5s in our list, right? James Lee and Jack Goose Givens. But Goose, everybody felt was the number 1. Pretty unanimous, we think?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any dispute. He's such a great player, and it makes me miss not being able to cover high school games in Memorial Coliseum, because that seems like that would have been a fun time.
It's really hard to argue with a guy that played several different positions. They switched him to center, and he then averaged 25 a game after moving him, around. So he's just, he's Goose. Like, he's Goose.
And again, another guy who packed the gyms.
Yeah.
And some of that was because everybody wanted him to go to Kentucky. But when they did find their way in, what they saw was this guy just had this elegant game. I mean, you saw as he developed in college into a shooter. He was doing that in high school. And those Bryan Station, like Alan said, this was the golden era of Kentucky high school basketball. So watching Jack, again, another guy ahead of his time. And, the sad thing, not to bring this down, but you feel like if a guy were that good this day and age, he'd run off to a prep school. We got to see them play through their senior years.
It's a really good point.
Great point.
That the local folks got to see him. And I kind of think you're better off. You're at home. Everybody in the world is going to recruit you anyway, and I think some of this overrated. That's a really good point.
Different era, prep schools, AAU, all that stuff. But we were the beneficiaries of watching guys like Jack and James and Jeff Mullen, and
Sure.
Your point in the break, you were talking about how he had 25 rebounds. Forget the 42 points. He was skinny, okay? He was skinny. And it's not like he was 7 feet tall. 25 rebounds. I mean, who gets 25 rebounds at his size?
And going against James Lee.
Yes.
Yes. Amazing.
It would be great if there was a tape of that game. I don't care if it's grainy black and white footage. We'd all love to see it.
Yeah.
home movies.
If you have them.
Keep it here on LEX 18. We take a deep dive into Lexington's basketball culture and talk about some of our personal favorite players on the list. Welcome back to this special evening edition, as we've been taking a look at the top 25 high school basketball players, both boys and girls, of all time. And we got to the list. Number 1 was Jack Goose Givens. Got some time for a few questions here. Just wondering, what makes Lexington such a special place, Jared, to cover basketball?
Well, the passion's still here. We were talking about the golden age of basketball in the 70s, and certainly it was that. But there's still sold-out gyms coming. There were several last year in the 42nd District between Bryan Station and Henry Clay. Lexington Catholic's Holiday Classic this year. The finals were between Douglas and Bryan Station. That was a sold-out, one person in, one person out game. Douglas is ranked number 3 in the state, and Bryan Station is ranked number 5 in the state. It's high times here in Lexington. It's a fun place to be.
I'll go with the coaches. When I got here, I was shocked how good the coaches were. And these guys would battle each other, Dick knows that, but they would go and have beers and play golf, and they were really good friends. But the strategy with the coaches back then, and I think one of the reasons besides the physical talent is that these kids, when I got here, were so fundamentally sound. It's an underrated part of it, the way they played and the way they did things, and I think that elevated the games, and I think the people in the stands were really smart basketball people, and they understood the game and appreciated the fundamentals, and I think that amplified things more than I think a lot of people realize.
I think just this list, looking at it, you see how important basketball has been to this community for 50, 60, 70 years. I think it kind of goes without saying that having UK here and the passion for that certainly bleeds down into the high school scene and just people's love for the game. And yeah, I even met my husband at the Lexington Catholic Holiday Classic a dozen years ago. So I know that's an important tournament right there, Dirk.
And we know the rest of the story.
The rest is history.
I think a big part of it too is the familial connections, because and friendships. You got kids who, like Jack and James, that's the best example, who might have gone to the same middle school or grade school and end up playing against each other, or relatives. My cousin plays for Dunbar while I play for Lafayette, that kind of thing.
All right, when you look at the list, any surprises for you that, like, in order of numbers? Now, keep in mind, we were given the task of boys and girls together. We may have wanted to see, a chance to get top 25 on each, but we had to get them both. So that, in some ways, left some people off. Any surprises?
Yeah, I mean, for Lexington Catholic, there's Mr. Basketball left off, and Ben Johnson, who was a phenomenal scorer for them just a few years ago, and their first Mr. Basketball. And then also from Lexington Catholic, Kelly Stamper was part of their first state championship team. She was the Sweet 16 MVP. So I was kind of, disappointed to not see them on the list. I don't know who we kick off, but
Dick threw out a name, but he's got another name. He said I could take it. When he said the name, I went, I forgot about him. Tony Wilson. Yeah. So that was good by you, Dick. Big assist goes to Dick, and he's right. And I know he's got another one, but yeah, how does he not be in the list? But I'm not taking anybody off. So it's a tough task.
That's
Great
true.
post player of the Lafayette State title team, but also from that team was Junior Johnson, who was Dirk Minnifield's running mate, and just fast and quick and could shoot it. Now, I left him off because I think Junior was, and forgive me, Junior, if I'm wrong, I think he was from Georgetown, but ended up somehow playing for Lafayette that year. But, oh, man, was he a great player. But one name I put on the list, and I'm even older than you, believe it or not. I put Steve Chandler on the list, and I never saw the man play. I've just read about him. Steve went to Henry Clay, and I'm told by many, many people, you may have heard this, he's the best athlete who ever came out of this city.
Wow.
As a three-sport guy.
I'll say for me, I would have had Tavion Hollingsworth up much higher. I'm not arguing with the top five, but he's probably the best, most electrifying high school player that I remember watching and covering. David Graves from Lexington Catholic was quite a shooter. He went to Notre Dame. And I've got a couple girls that I know we couldn't get everyone on the list, but there was a run at Lexington Catholic with Keela Snowden, Anaris Sickles, Natalie Novosel. All three of those girls were so fun to watch. Those were some great teams.
By the way, quick assist to the Dirt Bowl, which had so much to do with developing a lot of players here. I don't want to be remiss about that, because talking about homing your skills and free form and that kind of thing, I just wanted to add.
Well, there was a point where Sporting News ranked cities for high school basketball, and Lexington made the top 5. And as much as anything, because of the Dirt Bowl. I mean, you had to get there earlier. You weren't going to get in a good seat at the Dirt Bowl over in Douglas Park.
It's a starting point, I think, and maybe one for people to talk about now. And, talk about maybe who was left off, or figure out a way next time maybe we can do a boys and a girls and come up with. But we certainly appreciate all your help and helping come up with the list, along with the others who couldn't be with us today, but did help us pick these top 25. So thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Let's do it in another 250 years.
Okay, deal.
You guys will both be here, which is what is crazy.
You just scared everybody if Dick and I are still going to be here.
And a special thanks to you for joining us. This has been a lot of fun, and we want to certainly congratulate those that made the top 25 list. We know there are so many greats out there that maybe didn't make the top 25, but that certainly had an impact throughout the years for basketball right here in the city of Lexington. From all of us here at LEX 18, thanks so much for watching.